All right, let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate your time. Today we are going to be talking about the new reality of ransomware, and we're going to be talking about DRaaS, your ultimate protection for ransomware. So just a couple of really quick housekeeping announcements. If you'd like a copy of these slides as we go along, I am going to put them in the handout section before the end of the presentation, so you'll be able to grab them there. Also, if you'd like a replay of this presentation, we are recording it, and that will be available on our website within about 24 hours. So you'll be able to watch that. You can get access to that at infrascale.com/webinars. And then finally, if you have questions throughout the presentation as we go, just use that question tool within the GoToWebinar software, and we'll come to the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So also I wanted to share my contact info with you. My name's Carla Federigo, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Infrascale. I've been here on the Infrascale team for nearly 5 years. And you've got my email, my Twitter, my LinkedIn. Happy to talk with you further after the presentation. Also on the line we have Derek Wood, and he is our Director of Channel Marketing. And so for those of you partners on the line here who would like to get in touch with Derek, I'm also going to provide you his contact info. So I'll get that to you in the handout section as well. I'll add that into the slides. And here is the agenda for today. So first we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the background of ransomware, just a brief intro, which might be a little bit basic for some of you, but for others it might be just a really good sort of level set to get us all on the same page. And then we'll discuss why DRaaS is your best contingency plan. We'll get into the details of the Infrascale DRaaS solution so that you have a really good, clear understanding of how it works and what it can do for you. And then we'll get to the Q&A and the discussion at the end. All right, so we are going to quickly start off with one short poll. So you guys are going to hear quite a bit from me. I'd love to hear a little bit from you, simply asking, what data protection challenge are you facing the most? Just launched that poll there, so you should be seeing it up on your screen here. And I'll give everyone a moment to participate in that. Your options here so far are meeting RTO or RPO, B, ensuring everything's protected, C, proper disaster recovery planning against ransomware, or D, simply a ransomware mitigation strategy. We've got about 60% of you have voted so far. And now we're up to 75%, so I'll go ahead and with that I'll close the poll and share the results since we have the majority of you who voted. And it looks like right now we are split with 17% answering B, data sprawl ensuring everything's protected, 33% at a proper disaster recovery planning strategy, and then 50% ransomware mitigation. Great, so let me hide those results, and thank you everyone for participating in that. Appreciate it. And let's dive into the presentation. So you should be seeing back on your screen here, the current slide says strains of ransomware. Use the question tool. Let me know if for whatever reason you don't have that up on your screen, and I'll make sure that screen share is working. But first we're going to start off with a really basic understanding of what we're going to discuss today here and just ensure that we're all on the same page. And ransomware, what it is a malware that alters files by encrypting them, right? So in order to then get that data back, you either recover from a backup or you pay the ransom. And we've all seen the headlines when it comes to these recent ransomware attacks. We've seen, Locky, we've seen WannaCry, we've seen Petya. The other growing problem too with ransomware is ransomware as a service. So we're seeing these RaaS, ransomware as a service, or RaaS, is really making ransomware accessible to anyone. So the barrier to entry is lowered, and when it comes to cybercrime, nearly anyone can get their hands on it. So hackers have realized, well, this ransomware is cheap to purchase and to download. It has a quicker payout than other types of theft, and then there's a low risk of being caught because of the anonymity of Bitcoin. So what's important to understand is really how ransomware gets into your customers' organizations and how you can protect your clients from this threat. So that's what we're going to talk about today, because right now we're all at risk. And one example here, this one came through a ransomware as a service attack. So negotiating with hackers has almost become a business in and of itself. We're seeing things like web pages that are offering advice to hackers. We're seeing customer service for victims who have questions. And then we're seeing these phone lines that get set up to help victims making payments. Here's how to purchase Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. So this example here, this is a police department in Mississippi, and they experienced a ransomware attack. Their servers were infected actually while they were working on a case with the FBI. And the FBI just said, well, pay the ransom. And the police chief was blown away by the fact that the FBI couldn't help them. They called the hackers, they were walked through the process of buying Bitcoin and paying the ransom. So the police chief was actually talking to the person who was holding him ransom, talking to that hacker committing the crime, and he himself in law enforcement couldn't do anything about it. So we understand the threat and the risks associated with ransomware, but why do organizations pay the ransom? So we've seen a couple of different reasons here. Sometimes, maybe the data was never backed up or the backups were too old. Maybe it was a recovery attempt that failed, so there was no testing, no valid backups that were actually working. But also quite often what we see is that the time it takes to recover is more costly than just paying the ransom. So in effect, what this means is just the process is broken. If it takes, say, 4 days to recover data and it only costs $1,000 to release the ransom, maybe that's seen as the best option for businesses. So that's really the real threat of ransomware. And what we're seeing is it's not the ransom itself that's so damaging to a business, but it's the cost of downtime associated with the attack. And when we look at some of these attacks, it's, one big reason that they're so successful is the ransom demanded is normally just a quite small amount in comparison to the size of the business. So if that's the case, then the ransomware is quietly creeping in and businesses quietly pay it in order to stay in production. And really that's most ransomware attacks. You never even hear of it. And I have some numbers associated with downtime that we can look at as well. But I did mention that Derek Wood, my colleague here on the line, was going to jump in as well. And so Derek, when it comes to some of those specific strains of ransomware that we've heard of lately in the news, we've seen that WannaCry attack, the Petya. Is there anything that you wanted to add on those specific strains or anything associated with the cost of downtime of that ransomware?
Sure. The ransomware growth over the last 2.5 years has been quite alarming as far as the acceleration. So we had 2015, an estimated 320 million paid in ransoms. 2016, there was a major shift to targeting businesses instead of individual users, and the ransomware variants and exploits became much more sophisticated, and they blew the estimates away, and they reached $1 billion in ransoms collected by September, so not even a full year later. 2017 is estimated to be at $5 billion for the year. So we're seeing a continued accelerated growth, and just in the last 2 months we had WannaCry in May, which was broke the record for the largest cyber attack in history. And WannaCry was really everyone getting pretty lucky. By all measures, as far as how we evaluate different types of cyber attacks, there were a lot of holes and inconsistencies with the WannaCry attack that really let a lot of people out scot-free, even if they didn't have backups or weren't prepared properly, just because of how poorly run that campaign was. And by how poorly run that campaign, we mean these are organized crime organizations. These are not individual hackers looking to target, politicians or that kind of specified attacking. This is just like any other business. So if you're an employee for an SMB that's 5 to 500 employees, you're guaranteed on at least a couple of different lists that are going to be hit with ransomware phishing scams. I just assume that I'm on every ransomware list, and I see the phishing attacks come in on a weekly basis. And it's not just email, it's many different ways. And you're starting to see a sophistication that goes beyond anything that user training can do. It's beating known virus or antivirus, anti-malware programs. You should have preventative measures because it's always better to prevent something than to have to react. But the fact of the matter is that these variants and the way that they get into your network will always be ahead of the curve as far as those prevention methods. So the best way to prepare yourself is to have a good backup strategy. The attack that happened in June, that's being kind of referred to as not Petya, because it was based on a Petya variant, which was seen in the late 2015, early 2016 timeframe. The email or the step to pay out that ransom was to first email a specific address that you would see on your screen when you got infected. Well, that email was shut down by the email service provider within an hour of the campaign going live, which meant that instead of having two options to recover your data, one being pay out the ransom, you only had one, which was to recover from a backup. And oftentimes, like what Carla was saying, even if you have a backup, you're talking about a very expensive cost of downtime. So you had Hollywood Presbyterian. They had backups in place because they follow HIPAA procedures, which requires backups. But their speed of recovery just wasn't good enough. They were transferring patients out of their hospital for a week, so they had to choose the fastest path to maintaining or to restoring operations, not the path they preferred. So it's not just about having those tools in place, it's about testing your whole system and your recovery plan in the event that ransomware has taken out your local backups, which is it used to be a unique thing. It's now becoming quite standard in ransomware variants, and you have to make sure that you can get things back up and running very quickly. Otherwise, you're going to have to choose that fast path versus the preferred path, which is still going to be more expensive than just having a good backup and recovery system.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Adding a little bit more to the cost that you were mentioning, that how staggering that figure is with the amount that ransomware is generating. So on this slide here, what we're looking at, this estimate of ransomware costing businesses $75 billion per year. That's not only the cost that Derek is mentioning, but also when you factor in the operational downtime, you also factor in staffing resources that are needed to resolve these problems, replacement of systems. So we're factoring in really all of the costs associated with that downtime, and that figure is staggering to look at $75 billion per year. And it's really teaching us that those traditional sort of best practices of recovering from a backup just aren't sufficient if you're infected. And what we've seen in the past is that, with a backup solution, it could take 4 to 5 days to recover a production database, but DRaaS takes just mere minutes. And that's why this presentation is going to introduce the Infrascale DRaaS solution and really share with you what that mitigation strategy is going to look like. So the best approach to ransomware is three-pronged. And yes, of course, we need to have a comprehensive data protection plan that addresses security in a few different ways. So regular patching, AV protection, cloud backup, these are all part of the plan, but each not good enough on their own. So you also want to train the end users how to recognize those phishing attacks, how to address the suspicious links or attachments that might be found. And then you also need to have a mitigation plan to be able to isolate the infection when it hits and then utilize a disaster recovery as a service solution to recover the files and running systems. So ransomware should really be treated as an impending disaster, the same process as planning for a tornado or a hurricane. And part of that mitigating the damage is also to have a good backup of that data. So the third prong here that we're looking at, right, how to mitigate the damage. You want to have a backup of the data and the systems. You want to be able to roll back to a date before the ransomware hit, and that way recover without paying the ransom. But a lot comes into play with that. So the frequency of the backups should be no less than 30-minute increments. The data should be safely stored on-premise and off-site. And in order to go beyond just traditional backup, here at Infrascale, we introduced what we call anomaly detection. So to give you an introduction of anomaly detection, what this is, we're monitoring all of the backup activity, looking at those patterns of data change and taking a look at how frequently that data is changing. And we know, we've learned already, when ransomware comes through your systems, it's modifying all the files that it touches. So if you see a spike like you see on the right here in this change rate analysis that we're looking at, when there's a much larger number of files that has been changed, an alert is going to be released. So that way you can proactively see the threat of data encryption by those hackers before that ransom's ever demanded. So what's critical with this is that most solutions out there today don't have this proactive warning system. Maybe they'll tell you that they can't detect it, we can only remediate it, right? But here at Infrascale, we can do both. And I want to get into some of the details now about DRaaS and how DRaaS is really going to be your best contingency plan. We know that those traditional approaches to backup simply don't work against ransomware. And with DRaaS, it's going to allow you to replicate and protect your entire environment and then quickly fail over your systems, not just files and folders, to ensure uptime, to ensure availability when anything goes wrong. And that could, of course, be a ransomware attack, but also comes into play for those other types of disasters, be it a tornado or a hurricane or flood. So what's critical to note here is that there are many, many different ways to define a DRaaS solution. There are going to be various ways to back up and recover critical data. Organizations have different compliance requirements, different security requirements. And then there are different levels of flexibility in backup targets and recovery options. And then, of course, you also need a certain amount of control in failback procedures and orchestration policies. So what I'm going to talk about specifically is how Infrascale DRaaS works, because there are so many different ways to define that DRaaS solution. You want to really note the items that are important to take into consideration when you're selecting a DRaaS provider. And I'll talk about it in just a moment here towards the end of the presentation, but you don't need to take my word for it. I just want to share that Gartner named Infrascale a leader in the 2017 DRaaS Magic Quadrant, and that was released just about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So all of this information has already been vetted by Gartner. One more quick poll that I have for you guys here. So I'm going to launch this quick poll. Are you considering any data protection projects in the next 12 months? A is yes, we're evaluating solutions. B is we're interested, but we haven't started looking. Or C, no, we're fine today and just here learning. We've got 13% of you have voted so far. We'll give everyone a few moments to participate here if you'd like to. We're up to 50% now. I'll give everyone just another moment. So if you'd like to participate in this poll, go ahead and reach forward and select one of those options. Right now, we are about 50-50 between A and C. And of course, if you have answered C, having this information is always really helpful, just in general. So if you are evaluating solutions, of course, you'll have access to all the different criteria that you want to be looking for. And when that time comes, then you'll be more prepared. Okay, let me close this poll down. We have the majority of you have voted. We were pretty split between A and C here. So I'll just close this poll down rather than sharing the results on this one as well. We were fairly split between the first and last option. So you should be seeing that slide deck up here again. Currently, so the slide here that we're on is ransomware mitigation. And you can just use that question tool if for whatever reason you're not seeing that. We'll get that sorted. So we want to talk a little bit more about the Infrascale solution now. And what Infrascale guarantees is a 15-minute failover for a fraction of the cost of other providers. And that 15-minute failover is 15 minutes or less. We're going to take a look in just a moment at a cloud boot histogram where you're able to see all of the real-time recoveries with Infrascale Disaster Recovery. And really that's our mission here. Very simple, is just to eradicate downtime and data loss. And what's really also interesting about our specific approach to ransomware is that proactive warning system that we just looked at with anomaly detection. So here we're taking a look at backup versus DRaaS, just to be really certain that we're all on the same page, taking a look at what we're dealing with. When a ransomware threat hits, we know that time is not on your side. You need to be able to detect it quickly. You need to have time to take action and restore your database and all your mission critical apps. So those simple backup procedures are going to take significantly longer than a modern DRaaS solution. If we look at the top case with cloud backup, 4 to 5 hours is a best case scenario here. And part of the reason is, look at all the steps that come into play. So when it comes to restoring applications and production databases from a backup, it's going to require lots of planning and coordination. You have to find a clean point from which to restore. You need to get hardware to recover, set up the machine, recover the data, and then you start testing for viability. But if it's not viable, you need to start over that entire process before restoring to production. So if you have a DRaaS system, and taking a look at the bottom of the slide here, you can simultaneously cloud boot multiple versions of the same machine. So you can very, very quickly determine the safe version to recover. You can boot either to the cloud, a virtual environment, or recover to production hardware. And if you look at these steps here, the total downtime is 1 to 2 minutes. So that's saving you a ton of time and money because of really the simplicity of these steps. And just a quick note as well on the Infrascale DRaaS solution, it includes built-in failover orchestration. We're going to take a look at that in just a second. And that's going to let you create predetermined failover plans. So they can be scheduled to boot simultaneously or in a specific order, all dependent on what you pre-configure and what you need. So rather than just sort of talking through it here, let me give you an example. So here's a situation where we have some end users working on their production systems, and we'll install the Infrascale Disaster Recovery solution. So we have the hybrid cloud solution. We have the on-premise failover appliance installed locally, and this might be a virtual appliance or it might be a physical appliance. And then we have a cloud-based service, like would run on any public or private cloud. So we will capture the systems to the appliance, and then we'll dedupe them to compress the amount of data that's stored, and then we replicate those systems up to the cloud. Now, here, so if one system goes down, system outage or ransomware attack, the administrator could then fail over to the local appliance, bring back the most recent point or replica of that system. Here, all of the users, of course with just a couple clicks of the button, can then continue working with that application or that server. But let's assume there's a site-wide infection, a site-wide attack. So here in this scenario, the local appliance is no longer available. But even so, that's okay. We still use those same steps, just a couple of clicks within the dashboard. And from there, we roll back to a clean environment and we fail over to the cloud. And here we bring up a full virtual environment. It replicates exactly what was on premise. And then now those users continue working, and they're working by interacting with those cloud-based systems.
You know, one of the things to note as Carla just went through this scenario is the scenario that your local backups are not accessible should be the scenario that you plan against if you're trying to determine if you're prepared for a ransomware attack or not. Like I had mentioned, in 2016, when ransomware organizations started going after businesses, one of the first product changes we saw in the variants and the exploit kits, aside from moving across networks, was to target local backups. And that's been a major problem. We actually have a case study on our website that you can look at, a tale of 2 ransomware victims. And one of the cases was with CryptoLocker, and it totally took their local backups out of the question. So when you're doing a recovery to determine, or if you're going to ask your staff, you know, hey, are we prepared for ransomware? You'll get a yes or no answer. What you should be asking is, if our local backups are not accessible, how long would it take us to get the entire business back up and running? And that's going to be your determination of if you're prepared or if you're not. The Infrascale difference from the rest of the DR market, and which has propelled us to the leader status in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, is that we're not a hardware shop. We're a cloud software vendor first and foremost, and our cloud expertise has led us to providing a recovery environment that we can make available for you in a very scalable way that no one else can really match at the moment. So all the money that you used to have to spend to have, you know, a cold site DR, hot site DR, or instant failover, those are really expensive because of the recovery environment. But by leveraging the cloud, we can make this service not only quite affordable for you, but make it very simple for you to use. So your test recovery systems, instead of taking a whole weekend and costing $3 to $5 grand, which is about average for testing a business of maybe 50 people, now it can take 10 to 15 minutes, and then the rest of your time could go into reporting of, you know, how much time, based on your downtime estimate, how much did that cost you, and this sort of evaluation. And that's the true measure of being prepared versus not.
Exactly. Yep. Good points. And the 2 services that Derek sort of also just mentioned briefly, Infrascale Cloud Backup and Infrascale Disaster Recovery, these are really the two services that we offer. And Infrascale Cloud Backup is the direct-to-cloud solution. It's really oriented around data, typically for endpoint data protection, laptops, mobile devices, tablets, and it's also optimized for small to medium businesses. But Infrascale Disaster Recovery is really this DRaaS scenario that we're talking about now. So a hybrid cloud solution. It includes that on-premise component that we just saw in the last slide, and of course you can back up your data, but it goes further in capturing full system images and allowing you to boot and run those images on a local appliance or in the cloud, depending on the scenario. And as far as the specifics, taking a look at everything that we can support, we support any device. I did just mention very quickly laptops, tablets, mobile devices, desktops across Windows and Mac, We also have some MDM functionality built into our solution, geolocate, remote wipe when it comes to those endpoints. And also this includes servers as well, so protection for both physical and virtual servers. We support physical servers running Windows, Unix, and Linux. We support virtual servers running VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM. We can support more than 100 versions of different operating systems, and that is the broadest support footprint that you'll find in the industry. As far as recovery targets, we support any cloud or also a prepackaged appliance as well. So you can use one of Infrascale's 15 global data centers, your own private cloud, or third-party clouds. So our software runs with Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, IBM, Windows Azure. And then here is a quick high level of the process is. From the bottom up, what we're seeing is Infrascale Cloud Backup and Infrascale Disaster Recovery. And that next layer up, we're seeing the source system that we're trying to protect, whether it be Windows or Linux or Unix, VMware, Hyper-V. In either case, what we see here, I see questions coming in from Saeed. Go ahead and get your questions in. We are going to be coming to the Q&A in just a moment here. So here in the case of virtual environments with VMware, you'd have a direct connection to their API. In the case of Hyper-V, you'd have a host level or hypervisor level agent. And then we're going to capture those systems. And in the case of Cloud Backup, we dedupe the data and we directly send it to the cloud of your choosing, like we just mentioned a moment ago. In the case of DR, we capture the systems to the on-premise appliance, dedupe there, and then replicate that data to the cloud. So you have 2 copies of that data. So now everything is administered through our central web-based dashboard. You can log in from any browser, even if that's a tablet or a smartphone. And in the dashboard, you can access all of your orchestration policies and procedures as well. So that's something that I mentioned sort of earlier on in the presentation that we would come back to. So this is a key differentiator in any DR solution. So really important to ask your provider some of these questions. You want the orderly recovery of a server environment. And here, this was in one of our more recent releases earlier this year. We introduced a visual designer here for a drag and drop orchestration. So within the dashboard, you can see here, you just come into the boot tab. You'll see this page for orchestration, and you'll see a list of bootable machines. So you can just drag them over to the diagram design surface. You can rearrange them, so that drag and drop. You can add wait times if you want delays between boots, and you can create different boot groups to run. If some machines are more critical than others, and you want to separate them out that way. So just again, no matter what DR solution you choose, or if you're not looking for a DR solution now, but down the line when you are, it's really important to understand exactly how that solution plans to fail over applications and then fail back, in addition to how much customization and how much control you have in this whole orchestration process. So regardless of who you might choose, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, the 4 to 5 hour single database recovery time, imagine that times however many machines or databases are on your network. And boot orchestration is what will let you be able to recover your entire network, which is generally what ransomware will take out, in just a fraction of that. So
right.
Save time, save your business.
And then this is the tale of 2 ransomware victims. Derek just mentioned this a minute ago. So we actually have this slide with all the specifics. This happened in November of last fall. So these two businesses with one of our partners got infected with ransomware in that same week. And of course, their experiences were very, very different because of the underlying infrastructure that were in place. So I won't spend too much time on this, but we kind of got the gist of it. Really, the first company, the retailer, they were only semi-operational within 2 to 3 days of that ransomware attack. But the second company, the manufacturer, was able to restore all of their infected file servers, email, and ERP within about 5 minutes total, using Infrascale Disaster Recovery. And for those of you wondering about data privacy and security, quick note on that. This is a look at our encryption system. And we do take security very seriously. So your data is going to be encrypted at 256-bit AES locally, sent over an SSL, and then encrypted again at 256-bit AES. So if you do want to take it even a step further than this with UltraSafe Max, that's an option that you have. Not only can you define the password, but you can also define the encryption key itself. So that's really important to take into consideration. And then also for any of you who have compliance and other regulations that you need to take into consideration, whether it be something like HIPAA, SSA 16, FINRA, SOX, CJIS. All of our data centers are Tier 3 and Tier 4, and if you have any of these regulatory frameworks, again, another thing, just to make sure that the vendor you choose has that compliance factor built in. A little bit more about Infrascale, just as a company, who we are. We were founded in 2011, and right now we're active in over 170 countries. We have 15 globally dispersed data centers and about 1,000 channel partners at the moment. So in turn, protecting about 1 million devices and counting, so that's always increasing. And I said that we were going to take a look at our cloud boot histogram. So this is the actual recovery times for Infrascale protected systems. And this is something that we publish live on our website. It's available for you to see at any time. And what this is, just sort of how to read this, how to look at this, for each date on the x-axis, there's a green or a red bubble. And each of the green bubbles is representing systems successfully recovered, while any of the red that you see, the red bubbles are systems not recovered. They didn't boot up successfully. And then if there's no bubble on that day, it just means there were no systems recovered that day. So the size is going to correspond to the number of systems recovered, and then the position on the y-axis is showing the average time that it actually took to recover. So what's important to look at here is that average time is ranging from 0 to 5 minutes. And I did mention that we have that 15-minute failover guarantee, and you can clearly see here that the average time that it takes is far, far less than even this 5 minutes. It's usually just a couple of seconds. And this data that I'm sharing here, I pulled, the dates here are what, May 18th to June 1st. So just from about a month ago, and you can again see this live on our website anytime. It's infrascale.com/cloudboot-histogram. And I'll include that to you guys as well if you're interested in seeing this and checking it out for yourself. So last note here is just simply that our approach is getting a lot of attention. Gartner named us a 2015 cool vendor in business continuity and disaster recovery, and then they named us in 2016 a visionary in disaster recovery as a service. You can see that Infrascale now in 2017 has been named a leader in the DRaaS Magic Quadrant. So we're gaining that momentum as well. Not just a matter of being named a leader this year, but you can see that our approach you know, we got to be doing something right if Gartner has been making notice and including us in the Magic Quadrants, the cool vendor reports, et cetera. And you can see for this 2017 report, let's see, I'll grab a copy of this report if you guys are interested and put it into the handouts. Or if you'd like, just use the question tool and just say, you know, email me a copy of this report and then include your email address, and I'll just send that out to you after the Q&A here. Sound good? All right. Okay, with that note, we are going to jump into the Q&A next. So if you guys have specific questions, one note that I'd like to talk about a little bit more as well, we'll see if anyone has specific questions on our channel program, especially since we have Derek joining us here. We could talk a little bit more about some of the, not a little bit more, but we could talk at all, period, about some of the co-marketing events and efforts that we put towards our channel partners. So that's definitely something that we can chat about. And before we start into that Q&A, I have one more last poll. So I'm going to launch this poll, and then I'll start reading through the questions. Okay, there we go. So we have that last poll up. Would you like to learn more about A, Infrascale Disaster Recovery, B, Infrascale Cloud Backup, C, Infrascale Disaster Recovery and Cloud Backup, or D, not interested in either solution right now, just here learning? And we have 14% of you have voted so far. And what I'll do is I'm just going to leave this up here, and I'm going to open up the Q&A and start scrolling through there. So let's see here. Okay, I see some comments coming through. Please email the report. So yes, I can do that. And then some other comments, great program. I find it very impressive. Thank you very much. That comment is coming from Jay. Let's see, question on the compliance achievements stated. With the HIPAA certificate/compliance badge, are you simply indicating that you've conducted a risk assessment and are managing your environment according to the requirements within the HIPAA privacy/security rule? Question mark, and then thank you. Okay, so when it comes to compliance, we do, like I mentioned, take security very seriously. So all of our data centers are going to be compliant with HIPAA, with Sarbanes-Oxley, PCI, Safe Harbor, SSA 16, CGIS, not just those that you saw on that list, but many others as well. We sign business associate agreements. It's a very simple process. And I did mention our data encryption policy, as well as being able to take it a step further with UltraSafe Max if you'd like. So just depending on your customers, and if you are subject to any regulatory framework, you want that compliance factor built in. Jay, just maybe confirm that answers the question about HIPAA and making sure that we do sign those BAAs.
Yeah, I can comment on this. So, correct. We are not, Infrascale is not HIPAA compliant because we don't handle health records, so that wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be possible. So what we're indicating here are the different compliances that are out there that can be used with our system. So we use the encryption standards, the infrastructure requirements as far as the backups, the plans, basically what your tier 3 and 4 ratings actually mean, secure logins, different points of access and authentication, whether it's physical or logical access or both. All of those things come into play. And usually what I say to people, especially because each of these compliances sometimes have micro compliances underneath of them. So if you are, especially in the financial district, but if you look at something like a CGIS compliance, we are the only CGIS compliant cloud backup and DR provider in the country. CGIS is the Criminal Justice Information Services Department. It's the largest department in the FBI. It's what all the law enforcement has to deal with. So if you were to take that just as a single sample of our level of security and privacy that we take into play with our services, then you're pretty much going to hit the mark on everything else. You know, the new compliance like GDPR, you know, those are things that we're still waiting for a lot of government, or everyone's still waiting for the government to kind of define those, and that's for our EU customers. When the CCHIT certification and came out back in 2010, and it had no definition other than the fines that you would face if you weren't compliant by 2014, same type of thing. And it turns out that we're generally quite far ahead of the curve. So everything that we're doing is going to meet that. So if you need documentation to show how we're compliant, just give us a ring and we'll be able to show you the way that we use different encryption methods, the modules if that's important, which it is in terms of CIFs. If you need data center specific documentation, just let us know. And that's not a problem.
And then it looks like there's another question coming through. Derek, do you want to address some of the channel marketing programs that partners can run with Infrascale?
Yeah, so we actually came from the product management side of the business for the last 6 years or so, and what we wanted to do, or what I wanted to do on the channel marketing side, was really build up the partner program in a way that is going to enable and help you be successful more than just here's some documents, read them, and you know you're on your own. So we actually have a program going on right now where I actually will work with you and your marketing team if you have one or if you don't. And we'll work together on putting together a full campaign. And our goal is to do something that will get you leads in the short term, but in a framework that you can reuse for our services or other services you have. It's not lost to us that you have many different services that you're providing to your customers in addition to backup and DR. It's just that backup and DR happens to be a really nice baseline service because everyone needs it, and especially when it comes to the threat of ransomware, if you don't have it, frankly, if you're an IT service provider on this call, you're doing yourself a disservice because it's who gets blamed when the customer can't recover. So we actually will run through all the steps of everything from building a list, strategies, and the thoughts behind how you put together an email campaign. We have a relationship with a terrific service that will help us build out a list so that we can get those new prospects. So, you know, give us a ring. If you have your contact on our sales team, they can set up an introduction call with all of us, and we'll hear about how you're currently generating business, whether it's just referrals and you'd like to expand beyond the referral side business, and then we'll put together a plan with you so that we can do that.
Thanks, Derek. It looks like there are a couple of comments that came through. Jay, thank you for letting me know. I think it looks like he said data encryption states 255 AES, not 256. Appreciate that note. Saeed's asking a question about how he can configure backups and how he can bring it back online. So everything is configurable in the dashboard, and you can access the dashboard just from any browser. So that would be something that you'd be able to set all of the policies up in advance. Even the orchestration policies can be set up in advance. I'm happy to answer more specific questions. Just let me know specifically what else you wanted addressed. Jay is also commenting about the HIPAA, let's see, when it comes to HIPAA, he says, I have no doubt you guys are on top of it. I have a lot of healthcare clients who are under the issue that ransomware equals a breach, which equals a reporting scenario. Your ability to help there would be warmly received. And then Saeed's also asking about pricing and a couple other comments that I see about that. Okay, so
I can come in for a couple of those.
Sure.
So for the more specific how-to technical stuff, we have a lot of short how-to videos on our YouTube channel. So just search for Infrascale, and we have recordings. And every 2 weeks, we have a couple of our SEs actually run an hour-long in-depth dive of our products. So you'll actually see the interface firsthand, and then you can also follow up with whoever you're working with on the sales side of things to set up an NFR or any other steps you want thereafter. For the specifics of how, I forget what the second question was, Carla. It was, how does it work?
Yeah, so the how does it work, that looks like that question came from Saeed. How does it work? How can we configure our backups? How can we bring them back online if something crashes? So also, in addition to the note that Derek made with those how-to demo webinars and the how-to videos, Saeed, I will go ahead and send you over a link if you'd like to register and see firsthand how that works as well. The other question that Saeed asked then was about pricing. And Saeed, the pricing is going to be all just based on the amount of data that you have to protect. So I will put you in touch with one of our account managers that can go through that sort of sizing and pricing with you. It's all just based on the amount of data that you have to protect. Let's see, some other comments. Looks like maybe Jay then is just making a comment. This looks like an awesome program. Thank you guys for providing it. Saeed commented, that would be great if I can get the links for those YouTube videos. So no problem, I'll send those over to you. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming through just yet. We've got just a minute or two left here. So if any last minute questions come through, we'll definitely address them. All right. I'm seeing lots of comments of thank you for the information, great program, great presentation. So thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate you being here. That last poll that I had up, we have 71% of you who voted on that, so I appreciate your participation. Some comments now coming through just saying thank you. All right, well, I think then we'll wrap it up here. Appreciate your time here today. Very much look forward to working with you guys in the future. Hope that everyone has a great day and rest of the week. And any last comments, Derek, or we're all good? All right.
All good. Great job. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye.